I'm trekking into the world of Mean Girls to unravel a burning question. Who's the real Mean Girl? Hello, darlings, and welcome to Performance Perspective, where we watch different performances and then we share our perspectives. If you're new here, hi, I'm Carolyn, but you could call me Care. And today we are talking about who is the real Mean Girl? Now, before I get into it, did you guys see the trailer for the movie musical? I think what's interesting is how many people are confused by the trailer that's been going out. Now, if there are people that don't necessarily follow musicals, I can understand why they're like, wait, this is even happening? Yeah, this is happening. I think I had a reaction like this with Matilda. Wait a minute, it's a movie that became a musical that's now a movie musicals? Can we do that? And then someone said, yeah, Hairspray. Also, Matilda, the musical, was based on the book, not the movie. And I was like, oh. And also the fact that the trailer wasn't showing that it was a musical. Now, that didn't shock me because if you've been following me, you might have heard my reaction when talking about Wonka. Wonka is a musical, even though the director says it's not a musical. That's an episode on its own. But that is something that I'm noticing that the movie musicals are doing. They're not putting in the songs. Another thing I'm confused about is why is no one talking about the color purple? I'm so excited. I cannot wait for this. And I'll go see it and we can talk about it. But yeah, I guess that's sort of my tangent of wondering why people are confused. The Timothée Chalamet, trailer, there was no music, but you can see dancing, and even the part with the Oompa Loompa, you can actually hear the flute, and he's like, oh, I have to do the song, but then there's no song. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a marketing strategy where they don't want to tell people it's a musical because there are people who are like, I don't like musicals. But at the same time, I'm like, if there's people that don't like musicals, don't force them to accidentally go to the theater and then goes, all right, that's it, we're out. When this first song happens. And just to clarify for those that are confused, the Mean Girls movie is the movie that turned into a musical that went to Broadway. Now, again, if you've been following me, you would have known that I went and saw Mean Girls and I actually enjoyed it. I prefer the movie, but you know what? It's because I grew up with that movie. But the musical, I enjoyed it because even though it still felt nostalgic, it wasn't scene for scene exactly like the movie, and it was within the time period of, Mean Girls coming to Broadway by adding in the social media aspect. So now they're creating it for it to, be a movie musical. And I believe they've added songs to it. And I'm curious to see if they then adapt it to the Mean Girls in today's society, not back in the 2000s. Because if you look, there was no social media. Also, there was the three-way call. Oh my gosh, so classic. So I'm excited to see what they do with this movie and how they adapt it from the musical, because I don't think it's going to be exactly like that, which I think is kind of cool. Anyways, love to know your thoughts. But let's answer this question for the meantime. Who's the real Mean Girl? Sure, Regina George might be the go-to answer, but let's not jump to conclusions. We're about to explore the complex layers of Regina, Katie, and Janice. And trust me, it's not all pink and Wednesdays. Let's start with Regina George, the queen bee. Regina's the girl we all love to hate, right? She's got the looks, the charms, and that classic mean girl attitude. But is she just a product of the high school hierarchy, or is there more to her story? Regina is known as the embodiment of every high school mean girl. Superficial, malicious, the works. But you know what? There's more to Regina than just her mean streak. The film gives us peeks into her life that's not all glitz and glam. Behind the perfect facade is a family's life that's anything but ideal. There's this moment where Gretchen lets it slip that Regina's parents are sleeping in separate bedrooms. That's a big red flag for some family drama, right? With two lenient parents and a rocky marriage, where's the dad? Regina never spills the tea on it, but it's clear she's dealing with some stuff at home. And let's talk about her popularity. It's like she's always under a microscope, judged for her looks and what she owns. Janice even says it straight. Regina's value was often tied to her appearance. So yeah, Regina's not totally off the hook for her actions, but let's be real. Her environment played a big part in shaping who she became. I'm just going to come out and say it. Regina George, maybe not as bad as we all thought. But okay, let's chat about Regina George's good side. Yep, you heard that right. So Regina wasn't all bad. She had a bunch of positive traits that we often overlook. First off, the girl had confidence for days, was super smart.
Is butter a carb? Yes.
Okay, sometimes smart, and she always said what was on her mind. No filters there. It's true some of her better qualities got overshadowed by the not so great stuff she did, but hey, let's give credit where credit is due. I mean, her leadership, because Regina had natural leadership skills. Karen and Gretchen weren't just following her for fun. They saw something in her, and so did the whole school. Imagine Regina channeling that leadership into something like awesome, like, I don't know, activism or politics. She's got the potential to shake things up and make a real difference. And let's not forget the iconic moment she gave us. Without Regina, we'd never be quoting,
Get in, loser, we're going shopping.
Or playfully calling out,
Wiener?
Boo, you whore.
She left her mark in ways that go way beyond just being a mean girl. You know, it was actually kind of surprising that she'd even bother befriending Katie, let alone invite her to sit with the plastics. That move, it wasn't just a simple gesture, it set off everything else that happened in Mean Girls. Maybe it's hard to see Regina as a victim because if someone cut holes in my shirt, right where my boobs are, I'd be mortified. But Regina, she just shrugged it off. She strutted around with those cutouts like they were the hottest new thing straight out of New York Fashion Week. Ugh, the sun's hitting me, but we'll see how it goes. And let's be real, someone had to tell Gretchen to put a lid on the slang inventing. Now, Regina and Gretchen's friendship wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but there was this genuine moment when Regina stood up for Gretchen against Jason. It was horrible, but I mean, that was pretty solid of her. All right, we gotta close this. Sorry, I had to put it down. The exposure was just too much. The point is that Regina had Gretchen's back when it counted. You know what now bothers me? It's one thing for Katie and Janice to pull that whole Caltine bar scheme on Regina, but the way Regina was teased about her weight afterwards, that's just not okay. It's one of those moments in the movie that makes you think even though Regina was the so-called mean girl, she didn't deserve that kind of treatment. Okay, so after all that drama, plus the wild bus accident, you think Regina would just chill at home, right? Nope. There she was, rocking that massive brace like it was no big deal. You know, there's this deleted scene where Regina opens up to Katie about her issue with being possessive. Totally wish that they kept that in the movie. It was such an eye-opener about who she really is. And at the movie's end, Katie tells us Regina turned to sports to manage her anger. Seriously, props to her for finding a healthier way to deal with her emotions. At the end of the day, Regina is just as flawed as anyone else. She's not a saint, but she's not the ultimate villain either. It's easy to label someone based on their mistakes, but there's often more to the story than what we see at first glance. So who really takes the crown as the ultimate mean girl? Next up, Katie Heron. Oh, Katie, where did it all go wrong? She starts as the sweet newcomer, but quickly learns the art of high school warfare. It's not just about dethroning Regina. It's about how Katie loses herself in the process, hurting her friends over a guy. Let's not gloss over that. Initially, I totally related with her, trying to find her place, feeling like a total outsider. That hit home for me, especially during my early teen years. Instead of eating in the bathroom, I would go into the science room and hang out with the guinea pigs. But here's the twist. The more I rewatched the movie, the more I saw things differently. Turns out, I'm not really like Katie, and honestly, I don't want to be. Why? Because the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Katie isn't just a misfit, she's kind of the worst. Is it just me, or is she kind of like the dullest character in the movie? Think about it, we're always quoting Gretchen, Damien, Karen, but when do we ever quote Katie? The only one I could think of is The Limit Doesn't Exist. And it's not just about being less quotable. Katie, well, she's not exactly what you call a great person. Sure, she evolves throughout the film, and that's a big part of her story, but it doesn't entirely make up for her not so great moments. She might be the character we all relate to the most, but being relatable doesn't automatically make her a good person. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'd rather be Regina or Janice. I'd rather be Damien, but okay, they have their own issues, but at least they own up to who they are. Katie, she's just a bit of a mess, and I'm about to dive into why that is. Her approach to dealing with her so-called friends is pretty harsh, right? But here's the thing, she doesn't have a history of being mistreated by the likes of Karen, Regina, or Gretchen. She's the new girl, and yet she quickly gets swept up in Janice's schemes. Sure, getting back at the mean girls might sound like a sweet fantasy, but Katie's heart isn't really in it. She's not fighting a personal battle, she's just going along with someone else's vendetta. This makes all of her pranks and plots feel kind of empty, lacking that punch of genuine motivation. Reflecting on Mean Girls, it's kind of tough to be too harsh on Katie for betraying all of her friends. I mean, she barely had any time to form genuine connections with them, right? But at the same time, it's hard to feel all that sorry for her. Katie doesn't exactly ooze loyalty or empathy for the people in her life. It's like, where's the compassion, girl? So let's talk about Katie's crush on Aaron Samuels in Mean Girls. She goes for the classic dumb myself down move, failing calculus just to get close to him. And let's remember, Aaron's not exactly a math genius himself. This whole scenario, not the brightest idea, right? I mean, the film doesn't exactly endorse this as a strategy, and sure, Katie eventually learns her lesson, but come on, pretending to be bad at something you're good at to get a guy's attention, definitely not a winning moment for Katie. I also want to point out something. Remember when Miss Norbury awkwardly greets an African American student thinking that she's the new kid from Africa? Well, Katie goes and does pretty much the same thing in the cafeteria.
Jumbo! What?
Kind of a cringe moment, like, Katie, what are you even doing? When the burn book was shared to the school, I get that Katie never intended it for it to go public, but those allegations against Ms. Norbury, I mean, they were serious. Even though it was meant to be private, those kind of lies could have cost Ms. Norbury her job. It's a big deal and not something to just brush off. Also, is it just me, or is she super self-centered? Even when she starts to turn over a new leaf, it's like she's still all about Katie. Throughout most of the movie, she's totally oblivious to everyone else's feelings. Why? Because she's wrapped up in her own world, her own dramas. It's always Katie, Katie, Katie. Being a blank slate isn't the worst thing, right? But Katie's almost like a personality void, and that's not exactly a plus. It's kind of wild that she made it through the movie at all, considering she seems clueless about connecting with others or even having her own solid opinions. Just thinking about her character, yawn. I mean, okay, I'm already bored. So while Katie might not be the absolute worst in the world of Mean Girls, she's definitely not scoring any points for being awesome either. If Katie isn't the top contender, then who really holds the title of the worst Mean Girl? And then there's Janice Ian. Janice might seem like the cool, anti-plastic rebel, but don't let that fool you. She's the mastermind behind the grand plan to take Regina down.
Nice wig, Janice. What's it made of?
Your mom's chest hair.
What's more, she doesn't even flinch revealing it all to Regina. It's a bold move, but does that make her the real mean girl? I mean, we're all about the mission to overthrow the popular clique, the plastics. But guess what? They're not the only ones playing the mischief game. Janice, portrayed by Lizzie, was even more crafty than the plastics. Now, Lizzie actually spilled the tea on BuzzFeed's news, where she weighed in on a 2017 Twitter theory labeling Janice as the real villain of the movie. Her take?
A good human being, or is she not a good human being? It kind of takes everybody through.
She's layered.
She's layered. In retrospect, you think she was maybe a little bit of a mean girl?
Yeah, of course. But she was like way craftier than the other mean girls. She was like a mean girl with the spy plans.
Yes, with spy plans.
Yeah.
With purpose.
With purpose.
Yes, yes.
I think Janice got her own brand of meanness. No, she's not throwing punches like Regina or betraying friends like Katie, but she does drag the new girl into a revenge plot. That's not exactly what you call nice. Janice isn't the nicest girl around, but she is absolutely iconic. She's like a mean girl with a master plan, and her schemes, I mean, they're pretty intense, from breaking Regina up with her boyfriend to isolating her from her squad, plus her attitude about the teacher working a second job. I mean, come on, Janice, ever heard of teacher salaries? And then we think about Janice's motives in Mean Girls, and they're deeply personal, stemming from a grudge rather than any intent to better the school's social scene. Her fallout with Regina began with a nasty rumor that Regina spread about her. It's definitely not cool that Regina labeled Janice a lesbian, but there's an interesting point to consider. Thanks to someone on TikTok for figuring this out. Remember the prom scene where Janice is mistaken for Puerto Rican and she clarifies, "I'm Lebanese"? It's possible that a young Regina, not fully understanding, might have misinterpreted this. This nuance adds a layer of complexity to their past friendship and the misunderstanding that may have fueled Regina's actions. Janice's manipulation extends beyond just Regina and Katie. She also ropes in Damien. He plays a key role in her scheme, particularly in revealing Regina's infidelity. Janice, in a way that mirrors Regina's behavior, often couches her insults as terms of endearment. Take, for instance, her comment about Damien. It's meant affectionately, yet it's still an insult, blurring the lines between camaraderie and manipulation. So there was this Twitter thread that really dug into Janice's character in Mean Girls. The user pointed out how Janice dishes out some pretty harsh descriptions of the other students when she's giving Katie the lowdown. She doesn't hold back on Regina George, throwing some serious shade her way. But it's not just Regina. Janice labels the whole school clique scene, and based on ethnicities and physical appearances. It's a bit of an eye-opener on how Janice views the world around her. It's clear she didn't really think about how her plans would affect everyone. Like, the whole school went into a total chaos after the burn book got out, right? And I know Janice didn't do that. But even seeing all of that, Janice didn't feel bad or own up to her part in it. Remember the trust fall scene? Now, I get it. Regina's like, oh, this is Janice's dream to fall into like all of these girls' arms. But then, but that's the moment Janice decides to reveal it all and let Regina know what they did. She pretty much throws all the blame on Katie, which hits Regina hard because she thought Katie was her real friend. Next thing you know, Katie's chasing Regina, and bam, Regina gets hit by a bus. This is horrible. But what about Janice? She's literally being lifted up and cheered on for what she did to Regina. Kind of weird considering everyone adored Regina at first. And after all that, does Janice face any consequences? Nope. She goes off to prom, finds herself a boyfriend, and guess what? She and Katie are still friends. It really makes you wonder, why on earth did Katie keep hanging out with Janice? Rewatching Mean Girls got me thinking, does Janice Ian really deserve her happy ending? Look at it this way, everyone in the film goes through some kind of transformation. Regina ditches her queen bee persona, joining sports and leaving behind her rumors spreading days. Gretchen finds her own voice, stepping up as a leader in her new group, symbolized by those hoop earrings. Karen turns a new leaf by joining the school news and making her life more meaningful. But the biggest transformation, that's all Katie. She owns up to creating the burn book, stopping the pain it caused. In the director's cut, she even apologizes to Regina, and that moment with the crown, I mean, it's pure gold. Katie literally breaks it to show the fragility and pointlessness of cliques, choosing to be just a regular girl over having a piece of plastic. But what about Janice? Sorry. After seeing the redemption arcs of both the antagonist and protagonist, I can't help but wonder where Janice fits into all of this. She kind of just stays the same. Where's her moment of reflection or change? So after all is said and done, I'm calling it. Janice is the top mean girl and the true villain in Mean Girls. She's the one behind it all, the real puppet master of the whole drama. Well, that's it for today's episode. In the end, Mean Girls isn't just about high school drama. It's a mirror to the complexities of human behavior. It shows us that anyone can be mean, and sometimes the real villain is hidden in plain sight. So, what do you think? Who's the real mean girl? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And are you seeing Mean Girls the musical? I know I am. Love to know. And without further ado, take care, darling.